How do I know it's going?
You're good. It's got a red dot there on the video camera.
Welcome back. We are picking up again with Thomas Jefferson where we left off. He has just purchased Louisiana. For today's segment, for each of the three segments, I want you to, for today's assignment, write me one thing from each segment that you feel is the most important thing from each segment in long term for U.S. history. So in today's section, whether you feel it is a particular invention of Thomas Jefferson, a thing that he did, a thing that he avoided doing, whatever. From this first section, something that you feel is long-term important to U.S. history. And then email it to me at the address that is at the top of the course syllabus. And we begin with the Louisiana Purchase. Because of constant problems we have had over the years with goods not being able to exit out of the last portion of Louisiana, Napoleon had demanded from Spain that the King of Spain give him this whole Louisiana territory, and Spain was so weak that he simply gave it to Napoleon. Napoleon now has offered it to the United States, and to solve once and for all our problems of being able to deposit our goods at New Orleans and get them to ports all over the world, President Jefferson has sent James Madison over to solve this problem once and for all, and he says offer $10 million for the city of New Orleans, and hey, if he'll throw anything else in, take it. Well, before he can get there, the minister Livingston, who is already there, is offered $15 million for the entire Louisiana Purchase. Well, Jefferson and Congress immediately say this is a deal we cannot pass up, and of course sign the Louisiana Purchase. This transfer did establish a precedent that was to follow repeatedly, namely the acquisition of foreign territory and peoples by purchase. This is where we left off in the last lecture. We begin today with why did Napoleon sell the Louisiana Purchase? Come on, move. Oh, what are you doing to me now? There we go. Okay. Why did Napoleon sell? First, he needed quick money. He was more interested in redrawing the map of Europe, conquering territory there, and to have an army to do all of this, he needed money. And so by selling Louisiana, he suddenly acquired $15 million. Secondly, the Americans were threatening to make an alliance with England should fighting develop over the port of New Orleans. Napoleon did not want the U.S.-English alliance to take place. Third, if the U.S. had this new territory, we would build our strength and become stronger, thus becoming a threat to England, France's arch rivals. Yes, the limeys and the frogs have been at it for years. Fourth, Napoleon felt the U.S. was weak, and if at any time he should want the land back, he could simply take it back by force. He demanded it from the King of Spain. If he wants it back later, he will simply demand it from the United States. And fifth, Napoleon did not set definite boundaries on this territory, thus knowing it would cause friction in later years. So what is the boundary to the north? That here and there, and hopefully causing friction between the U.S. and England. And what is the boundary here? Well, hither, thither, and yon, to cause friction between the U.S. and Spain over that. Oh, what a wily character he is. Well, now that we have acquired it, we need to explore it. The extent of this huge new area was more fully unveiled by a series of explorations under the direction of Jefferson. The expedition of Meriwether Lewis and William Clark ascended the great muddy Missouri River and struggled through the Rockies to the mouth of the Columbia River. One man was a scientist, as Jefferson wanted to know everything about this new land. Who were the peoples? What was the flora, fauna, animals, geography, etc.? The other man was a military man to orchestrate the expedition, to protect it. According to the History Channel, detectives, they were also to discover if the Vikings or others had discovered this land first, thus granting another European nation's claims to the land. We have since found evidence in some of these northern areas of previous habitation of Vikings or Scandinavians. And Thomas Jefferson wanted to know, am I going to have others come to me and say, hey, this was our territory first, we had claim to it. This hazardous venture into the uncharted western wildernesses from 1804 to 1806 was aided by a French fur trader and his Indian wife, Sacagawea. Their trip all the way to the ocean also bolstered America's claim to Oregon. Sacagawea had also an added benefit in that she was a woman who had a baby with her. Not only as an Indian was she able to understand some of the native languages, not all, but some, and helped her husband as a guide and interpreter, but she sent a very pacifistic mood and response to the native Indians. We are not a war party. We are not coming in that regard. A war party does not travel with a woman and baby. So this helped them in dealing with the Indians to let them know we come in peace. The trip also, by the time they hit the Rockies, when they started out from St. Louis, they were heading into winter, and you don't want to winter in the Rockies. And so they pushed through all the way to the Pacific Ocean and wintered here. This is territory they had no claim to and no right to be in. And in addition, they did something really rather cheeky. He set up a fort, a military fort here. Not just let's winter here, we are setting up a fort in territory that is not ours. And later, the U.S. will base claims to the Oregon Territory because of the Lewis and Clark quick walkthrough of this territory. And we set up a fort, a military institution here on this territory. Lewis later, a couple of years after the expedition, will die. And for many years, it was said that he committed suicide. This is an area, if you're interested in, there is a lot of recent interest and research being done in this, and much of the new research is turning the old opinion upside down. And the new research is saying, oh, no, he did not commit suicide, he was murdered. And he was suddenly in a big rush to get back to Washington. He had something that he had to tell the government in Washington. And there is a good deal of supposition that what he had to tell could possibly have to do with what Aaron Burr was doing and his plans to create a new territory country out west between Mexican territory and land possibly taken away from part of the Louisiana Purchase. And should this come to light, this would be very disadvantageous to Aaron Burr. And so it is even thought that possibly Aaron Burr was the sinister hand behind, not the one that actually murdered him, but that sent the people who actually murdered Meriwether Lewis. But there is a lot of research going on with regard to this, and many feel now that he did not commit suicide, but was actually, whatever he was running to Washington, D.C. to talk about, that he was actually murdered in his attempt. Well, the second person who was doing research of the Louisiana Purchase is Zebulon M. Pike, and he will explore from 1805 to 1806 the territory near the headwaters of the Mississippi River, and in 1806 to 1807 he will venture into the Colorado and New Mexico areas, citing the lofty peak that bears his name. He, of course, will get much farther out of the Louisiana Purchase, but Pike's Peak to this day carries Zebulon M. Pike's name, and he will research the southern part of the Louisiana Purchase. And the demise of Hamilton and Burr. A few Federalist spokesmen attempting to plot with the scheming Vice President Aaron Burr for the secession of New England and New York. Their intrigue failed, owing largely to the vigilance of Alexander Hamilton, who subsequently provoked Burr to a duel. The pistol that killed Hamilton in 1804 blew the brightest brain out of the Federalist Party and destroyed its one remaining hope of effective leadership. Dueling at this time was illegal in the United States. Did that mean no one dueled? No. Dueling was still practiced, but yes, it was illegal. Hamilton exposed Burr's plans, which infuriated Burr, and he challenged Hamilton to a duel. Hamilton had no intention of carrying through with the duel, but to not show up would mean you were chicken. And so he showed up that day. They're given a single-shot pistol, and you do the thing. You have your seconds show up with you and back to back, and you count off your paces, and you turn, and you each have one shot. And so usually you want to get your shot off quickly before the other guy shoots. Well, Hamilton had no intention of going through with this, and so he aimed for the trees and wasted his bullet intentionally. Well, Burr had no intention of wasting his bullet, and so he took very careful aim after Hamilton had wasted his and shot the brightest brain out of the Federalist Party. Burr now turns his disunionist plottings to the Trans-Mississippi West. He was arrested in 1806 for treason. Tried the next year at Richmond, Virginia. He was freed after the presiding judge, Chief Justice John Marshall, had infuriated the Jeffersonians by what seemed to be bias in favor of the accused. The government's case collapsed when two witnesses to the same overt act of treason could not be found, as was required by the Constitution. The consequences for treason is death, and so the Constitution requires that two witnesses must attest to the same overt act. Well, they had multiple witnesses, but no two were attesting to the same overt act. Each one was attesting to a different act. And so Chief Justice John Marshall says you have not met the burden of proof and released Burr. His schemes are still somewhat shrouded in mystery, but he apparently planned to separate the western part of the U.S. from the eastern and unite it with to-be-conquered Spanish territory west of the Louisiana Purchase. The very fact that so dashing a figure as Burr could muster only 80 followers was significant. 80 followers. What is a score? The Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln. 70 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. 70 years ago. Score is 20 years. 7 years. 87. He could have just said 87 years ago, but 7 years ago. 60. Burr could muster only 60 followers. Obviously, the United States was doing pretty well, so that he could muster only 60 people willing to create a new nation. Things were not bad enough that people wanted a new nation under Burr. This is where, once again, that belief that possibly Meriwether Lewis was trying to get back to Washington to tell of Aaron Burr's schemes, that he was killed. And the next election. Election of 1804. Thomas Jefferson was triumphantly reelected in 1804, 162 electoral votes to only 14 for his Federalist opponent, Charles C. Pinckney. For his running mate this time, obviously Aaron Burr is not going to be satisfactory, and so he switched to George Clinton. And if you have not yet on D2L, please read about George Clinton. He will serve as vice president under two different presidents. And here we have the electoral map. What a landslide. Only 14 electoral votes, 8% for Pinckney. He gets all of them, Connecticut and Delaware, but he gets a split vote. Maryland goes 9-2. Territories do not get to vote. Until you get to be a state, you do not have voting rights. During Thomas Jefferson's second term, things are rather rough. There are problems, shipping problems with France and England. Both of them are stopping our ships on the high seas. England in particular is impressing our sailors. Both are seizing some cargoes. France in particular is stealing our entire ship and cargoes to prevent us going to war. Our early presidents knew we were too weak of a nation to risk going to war. So he instead puts an embargo. We will not trade with the European nations so that we will not be drawn into war. This causes great difficulty for the entire nation. The South, the West, has much of their livelihood based on agriculture, and they are used to trading their tobacco, their cotton, their grains with Europe. And now we are not trading with Europe. So their goods are just piling up. New England, while not being agricultural, is based upon shipping. They are the ones shipping these products back and forth. And since we are not trading with Europe, they are not earning money from Europe. And so their livelihood is very difficult as well. The whole nation is hurting. One indignant New Hampshire poet wrote, "Our ships all in motion once whitened the ocean. They sailed and returned with a cargo. Now doomed to decay, they are fallen a prey to Jefferson worms and embargo." New England seethed with talk of secession, and Jefferson later admitted that he felt the foundations of government tremble under his feet. Many feel the South was the first to ever talk secession. New England will talk secession a number of times before the South ever talks secession. I could go into great detail on this, but I'm not going to. We will just say that much of Jefferson's second term is very difficult, fighting with the issues of embargo and the South, the West, New England, the whole country having a very difficult time. An alarmed Congress, finally bowing to the storm of public anger, finally repealed the Embargo Act on March 1st, 1809. 3 days. Excuse me. 3 days before Jefferson's retirement. A half-loaf substitute was provided by the Non-Intercourse Act. This measure formally reopened trade with all the nations of the world except the two most important, England and France. Yes, we can trade with the others that we do a small amount with, but the two biggest ones we are still having embargo with. And Thomas Jefferson leaves office. Jefferson retained much of his popularity, even though it was severely tarnished by the embargo. His grip on his party was such that he could easily have won a third nomination and election, but he stuck to the two-term precedent with its anti-dictatorial stance. Jefferson lived 18 years after leaving the White House, glad to have escaped what he called the splendid misery of the presidential penitentiary. He is not the only president to refer to his time in the White House as the prison, the penitentiary. William Howard Taft referred to his term as his time in the White House as his presidential penitentiary term also. And on D2L, please read the biography of Thomas Jefferson. He has many similarities to George Washington. They are both extremely tall presidents, only half an inch apart. They are both orphaned by their fathers at very young ages. They're both born into wealth. They both are Virginians. They both marry widows named Martha. The widows named Martha are the ones that make them extremely wealthy. The dowries that they bring to the wedding far exceed the wealth that Thomas and George have in and of themselves. While Martha Washington had 2 children that she brought to the wedding, Martha Jefferson had no children, and to her and Jefferson were born 6 children, of which 4 died in young years, infancy. Only 2 girls lived to adulthood. And here we have pictures of Martha Washington and the 2 young girls. Monticello, the home he builds, takes him quite a few years to build this home. And it's a bit dark to see here, but I'll discuss it a little bit later. This is the cannonball clock. There's wires cross here and cannonballs on each side, but you can't see them very well. And there's names, dates, or names of the week on the sides of the walls here. We'll discuss that a bit later. Here's his bedroom. We'll discuss this contraption later. His bed, one of his many inventions. He even created the curtains that went with it. This is part of the room. This is stairs that go upstairs. This is the other part of the room on the other side of the bed. And Jefferson did not like to make his bed. And so this bed is all set up on pulleys. And so in the morning, you would pull the pulleys and the bed would go up to the ceiling and be covered by the drapes. And so no one would know or see whether the bed was made or not. And you can then cross from this side of the room to that side of the room. At night, you reverse the pulleys and pull the bed down, and then you could access the bed again. Quite ingenious, in my opinion. Not a Murphy bed. Murphy bed is one that, it pulls up and goes onto the side of the wall and then comes down. Well, the whole bed goes up into the ceiling. This is the back side of Monticello. And see this pond here? He dug this. Jefferson loved to entertain. Never knew what he wanted to eat. And so Monticello means little mountain. He's at the top of a mountain. Obviously, there's no streams at the top of a mountain. And so he had his slaves go down and get fish in the streams down below and bring them and put them in this little pond. And so at any time, if he chose, hey, I feel like fish tonight, they could simply come out into this little pond and with their net catch the fish, and he could have fish for supper. His style of architecture, always the same. Take a look at one building, hey, that's Jefferson's style of architecture. He liked red brick. He liked domed tops. He liked white columns and wide porticos. He actually submitted a design. There was a contest for architects who could submit designs for the White House. And he submitted a design. His came in second. Mr. Hoban's design, an Irishman's, came in first. And had Jefferson's come in first, I am sure the White House would have been built of red brick, had a dome top, have white columns, and a wide portico. But instead, our White House looks as it does because Mr. Hoban won the contest, not Thomas Jefferson. but this is the back side of Monticello. The Jefferson Memorial, not designed by Thomas Jefferson, so no red brick, but it does have a big white dome. And the trees, the blooming trees, cherry blossoms, given to the nation. They line all up and down the Washington Mall, given to our nation by the nation of Japan. And a stamp with the Jefferson Memorial on it. We have the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial, and Jefferson Memorial, all on the Washington Mall. And inside the Jefferson Memorial, a statue of Thomas Jefferson. At night, the Jefferson Memorial on the Potomac River. And what is written behind the statue here. Parts of the Declaration of Independence, which he was the author of. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Dun, 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 dun. And the front of Monticello, even on a postage stamp. And as I said, it means little mountain. He's on the top of the mountain. His gardens and things would have been all around. The parlor, the drawing room. Ah, that clock. The clock and the wires. Once again, I don't have a real good view of it here. Here you can see some cannonballs. Can't see the cannonballs and things on the other side, but you had the names of the weeks, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. As the clock ticks, the cannonballs move, so you can not only look at, hey, it's 7 o'clock, but depending upon where the cannonballs are, and it's Thursday, and it's Monday. So ingenious. An area to eat, another very secluded area to eat. He loved to entertain, and he loved to drink. He tried a number of different times and kinds of grapes to grow. He wanted a vineyard, but was unable. He tried different varieties of grapes from Europe, but different smuts and rusts and funguses. Never able to get a vineyard to grow it on Monticello. But he did not like to be disturbed while entertaining with people coming in and bringing new bottles and whatnot. And so in the sides here, he has dumb waiters that go down to below where he has the cool cellar where the bottles of alcohol would be stored. And so instead of someone coming in and interrupting to bring the alcohol, it would, when he needed it, it would simply come up through the dumbwaiter. And here you would put the bottle in there, it would go down, would come back, and here is down below where the wine cellar would be underground and much more cool for storing the wine. He invented a number of things. Quite an inventor. The swivel chair was his invention. This is before telephone, telex, email, anything like that. And so everything was done by correspondence. And so hours and hours of these men's lives was spent in corresponding. There was no electricity, and so natural light during the day was used, and at night candles. And so as the light would come through, you would constantly at your desk be moving your chair to get optimal light. Well, he didn't want to every hour or two have to readjust his chair, and so in between these two layers is a screw so that the top could swivel while the legs stayed stationary. So you could woo, you had a swivel chair. Moving to the best advantage of your lighting. He is also a very tall individual, and so here is his chair, designed his own desk for doing his writing here while sitting in his chair, and instead of his legs dangling down, his legs could be up while he hour after hour worked at his desk. He also invented his four-sided lectern for holding his books. So if you're doing research and looking up things while you're writing, you could have 4 books plus a 5th one up here. And so you just, once again, here's your base, and there's a swivel between this, just shoo, shoo, turn it from which side to which, including, and look up 5 different books at the same time. Once again, no copy machines. If you're doing many copies of something, it'd be worth setting up the printing press for. But if you're just wanting a copy or two, it's not worth setting up the printing press for. But here he devised his own copy machine, the first copy machine we know of. And with the use of one pen, supposedly, with another piece of paper next to it, it would put the same pressure and supposedly write identically on the other piece of paper. So here is a person doing as Thomas Jefferson would have, and the second pen is writing identically as Thomas Jefferson would be writing with the first pen. And supposedly it did and does work effectively. So the first person to invent a copy machine was Thomas Jefferson. And this obviously is not Thomas Jefferson because his legs do not come out all that long. He also created his own Bible. Thomas Jefferson was a deist, and we did not get time to cover that under test number 1. He did not believe in a God that was involved in your day-to-day life. He believed in a God that was simply a creator and then walked away from his creation. And so he picked and chose what he wanted out of the Bible. And so this is the life and morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And it's simply from the Gospels. He takes from the Greek, the Latin, the French, and the English. So he has a section for each of those languages. And if he didn't like a particular part because he didn't want to abide by it, well, Jesus said, don't do this. Well, I don't want to not do that. Well, then he didn't include it. Well, he just included the parts that he felt were good morals, that he agreed would be good for the people as a whole. So he only included what he wanted to agree with. So it's known as the Jefferson Bible. And as you can see, he got Bibles and cut out portions that he wanted to include, and then got a blank book bindings and put together his own Bible, which is in the Smithsonian. Monticello that he built. Indoor plumbing. Whoa, quite ingenious. Here is the second floor shaft to its privy. Here's the first floor privy. The entrance is not shown. Here is the privy for Jefferson's bedroom. And here is, once again, the stool. There would not be a nice smell coming from there, so you would keep the lid on there while not seated. Here you would have items to use for wiping of the backside. As things fell through, there has been a tunnel dug for the escaping of sediment and venting of the air. So quite ingenious. Just don't get too close to the outlet here. But yes, a vent for noxious fumes. And in his bedroom here, he also has a telescope. After he retired, he would spend hours watching from this telescope his creation, his baby. One of his greatest accomplishments, he felt, of his life, the creation of the University of Virginia. One of the 3 things he felt worth mentioning on his tombstone. He designed the buildings. He even helped select the faculty. And he orchestrated everything about the beginning of the university. Its main first building, once again, the rotunda, on a stamp, University of Virginia. And does this look like Jeffersonian architecture? Domed buildings, white columns, red bricks, wide porticos. Yes, and he watched as the buildings went up day after day. And the university as it is today. Another home that he built, Poplar Forest, once again, dome, red brick, white columns, wide portico. This one is unique, though, in that it's in the shape of an octagon, has 8 sides. It had fallen into disuse and ill repair, and they are now renovating it. I did not get a chance to see this when I was going through Virginia. Maybe sometime in the future when I get back, I'll get a chance to go see it. This one at the time, he did not have indoor plumbing for. It had an outdoor privy. You must say, wow, Miss Whistler is into bathrooms. A cutout of his wife and his daughter, Martha Jefferson. And that same daughter, younger, while she still had the red hair. Just like Daddy. His wife, when she died, made him promise that he would not remarry. She was very concerned that her 2 remaining living daughters not have a stepmother. And he promised, I will not remarry. He was so in love with his Martha and was absolutely devastated when she died, just inconsolable. When he married Martha, Martha's father used to make trips at night to the slave quarters. And when she married Jefferson, she brought with her her own personal slave, which was which was Sally Hemings, which was her half sister because of the dalliances of her father. And it was said that Sally Hemings looked remarkably similar to her half-sister, Martha Jefferson. After Martha died, Jefferson did not remarry, but he apparently did not promise Martha, I will not have sex. And Sally became Jefferson's half-sister of Martha Jefferson, mistress. Sally Hemings became mistress. I hope I got this written right. Yeah. Sally Hemings was mistress to Thomas Jefferson and bore him approximately 10 children. The two pictures I have here is of one of her daughters, which is Harriet Hemings. Because of no marriage there, he did not give them the Jefferson name. They carried on the Hemings name. This Harriet Hemings is 3/4 white and only 1/4 black. But at that time, even though they were 3/4 white, they were considered black. If you have one drop of black blood in your body, at that time period, you were considered black, not white. He was known to race around, even in Washington, D.C., in an open buggy with Sally in the seat next to him, which was just absolutely scandalous. Now, she could not serve as First Lady. She could not open the door at the White House, be seen as any kind of figure there. But yes, it was well known, his dalliance, and was seen as very scandalous. So yes, to the half-sister of Martha were born about 10 children. Picture here of Thomas Jefferson, and in the background Monticello. And here in his natural state, that red hair. Jefferson with Adams and natural, both of them, Ben Franklin and Jefferson. The tombstone of Jefferson. This is not the original one. This is not the second one. I don't know which number this is. They have changed them over the years as they have become dilapidated, and they have grown in height over the years. What they have kept true is what he said he wanted written on his tombstone. He had determined this long before he died. He said what he wanted on there was author of the Declaration of Independence, author of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. His wife died at the age of 33, and her gravestone is also on the Monticello graveyard property. There are quite a few stamps of Thomas Jefferson, as he was a very popular president of the United States. Here from the Seychelles Islands, showing the Louisiana Purchase. And here Mount Rushmore, Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Lincoln. And that is the end of session number 1. Thank you.